I'm Vanessa, standing in the middle of my father's backyard, surrounded by stunned guests and the wreckage of what was supposed to be a joyous celebration. I'm brought back to the moment that changed everything. My 17-year-old son, Leo, is by my side, his eyes red from crying and his hands trembling. My father, Henry, looks at me with a mix of shock and anger, while his new wife, Clara, glares at me with undisguised hatred. And there, old and fierce as ever, stands my grandmother, Victoria, holding a stack of papers that will shatter my father's lies. Let me take you back a couple of years. I used to have a stable life. I had savings, a good job as an interior decorator, and a family I thought was solid. Then my husband, Mark, decided to leave me. He not only had an affair with his coworker, but also emptied our joint bank account and left me with a huge credit card debt. I was left alone to clean up his mess, knowing that if I didn't pay it off, my credit score would be ruined and I'd have nowhere to go. 8 months ago, my mother, Catherine, was diagnosed with terminal cancer. I watched as she fought bravely, but in the end, she lost the battle. The medical bills and funeral costs were astronomical, and when I reached out to my father for help, he coldly refused. "She's your mother, Vanessa," he said. "Clara wouldn't like it if I got involved." And he didn't even bother to attend the funeral, claiming that my 16-year-old half-sister, Lily, had a dance recital that weekend. 3 months ago, the design firm where I'd worked for years suddenly went bankrupt. I was left without a job, and they still owed me a couple of months' salary. I applied for unemployment benefits, but there was a long processing delay due to the complex bankruptcy paperwork. I used the last of my money to pay the rent for a few more months, praying that I'd find a new job soon. But the job market was tough, especially in interior design, and an eviction notice was soon served on me. Leo, my amazing son, has been my rock through all this. When my mother first got sick, he started working at a local coffee shop. He wakes up at the crack of dawn every morning to make coffee for strangers, all while still going to school and preparing for his SATs. He brings in a little money each month, just enough to cover our basic needs, but it's a far cry from what we need to get a new apartment. My father's neglect didn't start with my homelessness. It began when he married Clara. I was 18 when I found out about their affair. I came home early from school one day and saw them through the living room window, kissing on the couch while my mother was at work. That betrayal broke my mother's heart, and she never fully recovered. Over the years, my father's favoritism towards Lily was obvious. When I graduated from college, he didn't show up because Clara was having some health issues and needed him. When I got married, he gave us a measly gift. But when Lily was born, he bought Clara a luxurious diamond necklace. After my mother's funeral, Leo and I were sleeping in our car. One morning, after watching Leo go to work in the pre-dawn darkness, I knew I had no other option. I called my father to ask if we could stay at his place for just 2 weeks until I found a job and we could get an apartment. Leo's SATs were coming up, and he needed a proper place to study. But my father refused, saying that there was no room in his 4-bedroom house, where Lily had 3 rooms for her hobbies. He even mocked Leo for working at a coffee shop, saying that was the future I'd given him, while Lily was preparing for a career in dance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I called him out, reminding him of all the things he'd done wrong, of how he'd abandoned my mother, and how he was turning away his own granddaughter and great-grandson. I also brought up my grandmother, Victoria, hinting that she knew more about the house than he thought. He got angry and hung up on me. Leo, who had heard the whole conversation, was heartbroken. He asked me about this grandma I mentioned, and I decided it was time to tell him the truth. Grandma Victoria was the one who really owned the house my father lived in. She had always been kind to me and my mother, and I knew she wouldn't stand for my father's cruelty. I called my father again the next day, asking if Grandma knew about all his actions. His guarded response told me everything I needed to know. I threatened to tell Grandma, and he hung up once more. That evening, I drove to my father's neighborhood. I parked nearby and watched the house, memories flooding back. I remembered when I was a child, Grandma Victoria holding my hand and telling me that the house was hers, and one day, it would be mine. I also remembered how she comforted my mother after the affair. I knew someone who could give me more information about the house, my uncle, Benjamin. He was a real estate lawyer and had always been nice to me. When I called him and told him everything that had happened, he was appalled by my father's treatment of Leo and me. He revealed that Grandma Victoria was furious about my father not attending my mother's funeral. She had been waiting for the right moment to hold him accountable, and the house was still fully in her name. My father had been living there rent-free for 30 years. Encouraged by this news, I called Grandma Victoria. She answered the phone, and her voice was as strong as I remembered. She knew everything already and was outraged. She invited me and Leo to Lily's birthday party, saying that she'd take care of everything. Before the party, Uncle Benjamin arranged for some clothes for us. Leo was nervous, afraid that my father would humiliate him again. But I told him to trust Grandma. When we arrived at the party, the contrast between our shabby appearance and the luxurious setting was striking. Luxury cars lined the driveway, and the backyard was decorated beautifully for Lily's party. As soon as we entered, people started whispering. My father saw us, and his face dropped. He and Clara approached us, demanding that we leave. Just then, Grandma Victoria arrived. She walked straight past my father and Clara, hugged me, and then turned to Leo. She told him how proud my mother would have been of him, and her words echoed through the silent backyard. Then she turned to my father. She demanded an explanation for not attending my mother's funeral, for refusing to help us when we were homeless, and for mocking Leo. My father tried to make excuses, but Grandma wasn't having any of it. She pulled out the deed to the house, proving that it was hers. The whole party was in shock. Lily, who had no idea about my existence, was confused and asked who I was. My father was speechless. Grandma announced that Leo and I would be moving into the downstairs guest room that night. Clara protested, but Grandma silenced her. Uncle Benjamin also made it clear that if my father and Clara didn't comply, they could be legally evicted. The party was over, and my father's perfect image was shattered. People left without saying goodbye to him. We moved into the guest room that night, and after weeks of sleeping in the car, it felt like a dream. A week later, my father came to me to apologize. But his apology seemed half-hearted, and he still didn't seem to understand why his actions were so wrong. I told him that I didn't want anything from him. I just wanted him to understand why I couldn't pretend everything was okay. 3 weeks after the party, my life started to turn around. I got a job offer at a small interior design firm nearby. The unemployment back pay came through, and I used it to pay off the last of Mark's debt. Leo took his SATs and scored in the top 15% nationally. His manager at the coffee shop had written him a great recommendation letter, and he was promoted. Before we moved out to our new apartment, Grandma Victoria told me that she was rewriting her will. The house would go to me and Leo. She said it was about what was right, and that my mother would have been proud of me for never giving up. I sent my father a final message, telling him that I didn't hate him, but I needed to protect myself and Leo. I wouldn't cut him off out of anger, but because I needed boundaries. He never replied, but Lily reached out to me, apologizing for not knowing about me. I told her it wasn't her fault, and we could get to know each other. In our new apartment, I placed a picture of my mother on the bookshelf. Leo was at his desk, working on his college applications. As I watched him, I knew that we'd made it through the storm. We had Grandma Victoria to thank for standing up for us when no one else would.